So in this segment, we're going to be discussing Rachel Reeves' perceived betrayal of businesses and how unhappy the CBI are, along with kind of Bad Notch's push to kind of reclaim being the party of business as well. So let's have a listen to this clip from Channel 4 discussing the situation.
Of the Exchequer.
But Reeves was brooking no criticism. The public finances are hard and so too are the tax choices, she said.
I've heard a lot of feedback. What I haven't heard are many alternatives. Businesses can...
Well, changing capital gains tax to be equal with the income tax, increasing the top 45% income tax rate, those were some of the solutions you could have gone for.
Now be certain that we're never going to have to do a budget like that again. And so while the decisions were difficult, I do believe it was better to do all of that in one go rather than to do half a job this year and then leave uncertainty hanging over all of you for another year when I come back for more.
So the thing, it is smart doing it in that way, as in getting it all out at once, because it leaves more time for between now and the next election. But also, I don't think people believe her, especially when she never made it clear she was going to do this in the first place. So, it's like, a wise man once said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, I can't get fooled again.
Haven't done that. We have now wiped the slate clean. You can be confident that we're not going to have to come back again and do another budget like this. So you can be confident about the tax rates we've set for this Parliament. And public services now need to live within the means that we've set them.
That to me, that line's a bit ominous there. Public services need to live within the means we've set them, and we know it's not adequate enough at all. So I think that means public services will not get the increases that we need, especially when growth is at such a horrible amount. I found the George Bush quote that I was quoting, so let's quote it properly.
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, we can't get fooled again.
There we go. Sorry, I had to quote him properly. If we're going to quote such a master orator.
Bars and restaurants have been the big casualties of the tax changes, but other companies more focused on energy and infrastructure have been the winners of Labour's economic vision.
This makes sense because obviously Labour have talked a big game about investment into energy and infrastructure. We'll see if that kind of bears out, because I don't want it to be a bung to private companies, especially when we've already seen a bung in terms of the carbon capture.
We all run around, like Dad's army going, we're doomed, we're doomed, we're doomed. You're sure as hell we'll be doomed. So there are always people who feel like I lost in the budget. Okay? We just need to get beyond that. And the faster we get beyond that conversation, the better.
Rachel Reeves' promises to business mean Labour have once again tied their hands. She will need growth and their industrial strategy to really deliver, if her words are not to be undone.
I can't see it delivering. There's not a lot in there in terms of investment. GB Energy, just the biggest joke I've ever heard since Boris Johnson.
And Ray Newton-Smith, the Director General of the Confederation of British Industry, is here with me now. Now, it's hard not to see this as a bit of sort of business huffing and puffing, because the Chancellor had already said this was a one-off reset, and then your message today has been, well, don't do this again. And she said, well, OK. I mean, what was it all about?
I think what's really important to say is the business leaders I've been speaking to is the budget was really tough on business, and the decisions they are having to make, because we are seeing higher contributions from national insurance, means that it's harder for them to invest. It's harder for them to create the jobs they want to create in our local communities. So
what we've seen is the cost of staffing go up, and that's one of the biggest expenditures for any business is normally staffing costs, and that has gone up considerably.
whether you're a theatre and you're not making a profit this year and already this is going to take more out of your bottom line next year, they want to be growing, but it's really difficult. And if you're a further education college and you want to be providing courses that help people back into work, you are also facing this cost. So I think we need to acknowledge the challenges businesses are facing, and we need to make sure that we make it easier for them to invest and grow going forward.
But what did they expect? You know, when you were all sitting down for these smoked salmon breakfasts, did it not occur to any of you that taxes might have to go up.
And this is what I mean, like, how close businesses got to the Labour Party, and we did see their impact of, businesses and donations when Rachel Reeves famously dropped her pledge to do massive investment of green energy and divert it to the private sector.
I think businesses acknowledge we need to fund our public services. Everyone really sees the pressure on the NHS and the need to get funding to deliver to our frontline services. But over the long term, the only way we can fund those public services is by encouraging investment and growth in the UK economy. And I think, as you heard there from Keith Anderson, there are so many business leaders who are really defiant about the UK's capability. We have world-leading universities. We've got creative industries. We've got manufacturers. We've got...
So all of these have been completely KO'd by Brexit, by the way.
What do you want them to do?
So we want them to have this conversation about how do we really drive growth and investment in the UK.
And what's the answer to that?
Well, I think
what
there's
do you want from government?
I think in the immediate, we need to take off some of the pressure on businesses' bottom line. So the Chancellor is committed to reforming business rates. We really need to make sure...
We've heard a lot about business rates, but I do want to see results. If they were serious about that, because they've been talking about that for years, surely she could have done that in her budget, and that would have changed the conversation quite a lot.
That works for retail and hospitality, but also makes it easier for our manufacturers, our aviation sector, to invest and choose to invest in the UK economy. And we also need to think about the growth and skills levy. The government have committed to doing that. Let's bring that flexibility into how the apprenticeship levy funds are used now so that businesses can invest in the training that our workforce needs. And we need to double down on our capability.
It does feel more like a doom and gloom budget for business rather than anything else, I think. I think that's the way they see it. I don't think a lot of the positive changes that Labour have talked about really came to fruition during this budget, because we definitely would have heard the goons talk about it if they did, reformation of apprentices and apprenticeships and things like that.
And set out that blueprint for how the UK is competitive on a global sphere.
And how important are these supply-side reforms and planning and all of that? Will that deliver the growth you want?
So I think absolutely ensuring that planning decisions are made more quickly. That is one of the things that's been holding back investment. That will absolutely make a difference, but that really is about our growth over the long term. So we also need to make it easier for CFOs across the land to say, right, as a result of the decisions that have been taken at this budget and in future budgets, I'm going to decide to invest more in the UK. I'm going to take a risk on someone who maybe has been out of work for a period of time, because we know there are over 9 million people who've been out of work, and we need to help them into work and make sure that they are able to contribute to our economy.
She's talking about businesses like they're some sort of altruistic entities that will, help people that are out of work and whatever. It's like, no, if they're looking to expand and the only people they can hire are potentially people that have been out of work long term because they don't pay enough or because unemployment is quite low, then they're going to have to hire them and train them. Like, you're not doing that out of altruism or the goodness of your heart. You're doing that because you need employees, in order to expand your business.
Economy.
But in the short term, you're asking for, having had a tax raise, you now want a tax cut in business rates. Do you want that for everyone, or do you want that to be just targeted at the people who are really struggling?
What we're saying is you need to reform business rates to really make it easier for businesses to invest in making their buildings more energy efficient, to invest in...
That's not what they're doing, though. They invest in... normally, if it's especially a medium business or a bigger business, it goes to shareholders or it goes to the big boss. This idea that you want to cut, essentially costs for business so they can invest in green energy or whatever, complete hokum.
In building and expanding some of our transport infrastructure, there are things that can be done.
They'll only invest in our transport infrastructure if it's worth it for the government. If the government put the money in. That's why you got Keir Starmer shouting out BlackRock. He goes, I'm determined to deliver growth, create wealth and put more money in the people's pockets. This can only be achieved by working in partnership with leading businesses like BlackRock to capitalise on the UK's position as a world-leading hub for investment. So this idea that businesses are going to do it off their own back, no, they're waiting for the government to put the money in, the government to take on all the risk, and then they're going to take all the reward.
To reform the business rate system, to really get investment and growth going. That isn't something that's going to be done tomorrow. That is something that the Chancellor has committed to, but will be implemented over the next 18 months.
And how worried are you that, you said you'll don't do it again, but ultimately if more money is required, the government is still committed to not raising.
We'll come back to this because I want to discuss this if more money is required, which most likely it will be required based on what we've heard about the the problems around the economy.
Raising income tax and VAT and national insurance for employees. It might come back for more in some other form, mightn't it?
Well, I think we will hold the Chancellor to account for the words that she said at our conference today,
all she said is we won't raise national insurance again.
But she said I took the tough decisions at this budget so I wouldn't have to come back for more next year. And so she knows that we need to see business investment growing. She knows
what if we have to double defence spending? Donald Trump pulls the plug.
The
We need to
Chancellor
raise
will
it to
always
3%,
have
whatever,
tough choices to make. But what's really important is when she is.
I don't think this is Christian's best interview, I'll be honest.
Making those decisions. She talks to CFOs, she talks to businesses who are really on the front line of making those decisions as to, do I invest now in the UK? Do I take a chance on hiring more people? Do I open that new store? Because those are the difficult decisions business leaders have to make. They want to invest in the UK, they want to be creating jobs, but we've got to make it easier for them to say, I'm going to invest now. I'm going to create those jobs.
Yeah, I think I agree with her for the most part there. I think they do need some stability. But again, big up BlackRock, I guess. This is Bad Notch's pitch to business. I covered it in a separate clip, but I think it's worth discussing. And I think what she's going to push is this idea that, businesses cozied up to Labour because they thought the Labour Party were going to win, or they knew it, and now they've been bit effectively.
We haven't done the work which is needed to understand what the root causes of our problems are. And I am worried because the Labour Party are not just repeating many of the mistakes which we made in government, they are doubling down on them and combining them with an unprecedented raid on business.
Just like you went through an unprecedented raid on working people.
Today, we are all talking about the consequences of the budget, but we do not yet know what the full consequences of their legislative programme will be, like their employment rights bill, designed by trade unions.
Again, that's not really true. Some of the trade unions were not happy with some of the stuff in the bill, but pop off, I guess. Also, the fact that we still won't have the worker protections like other countries have, like France, for example. So I'm not that scared, given that France isn't gone to hell because their workers have rights.
But there is no point in me just complaining about Labour when it was obvious that we Conservatives lost the confidence of business.
This is the sales pitch right here. This is the bit it's important to note, because the Labour Party have lost a lot of donations from small donations, kind of from individuals, and have relied heavily on big business.
I was not surprised at how many people attended Labour's prawn cocktail or smoked salmon offensive last year. I know it is because you thought that we didn't understand what your needs and concerns were, and you knew we were going to lose.
Boris Johnson famously said F business. So again, that's not the biggest surprise. Reeves tells firms no more tax rises as she defends the budget. So, Reeves, like we mentioned earlier, that she's not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. So the question is going to be, when she has to deal with the big economic black holes like this one here, where Reeves tells Cabinet UK still faces a £100 billion black hole over the next 5 years. So Reeves has told the Cabinet in the UK they still face the £100 billion black hole in the public finances. At meeting of the political cabinet, the Chancellor said the £22 billion gap this year, which the government blamed on poor economic inheritance for the Tories, would be a recurring cost each year of the Parliament. So, they recoup some of it through this national insurance increase, as well as, changes to other taxes. But the question is, how are they going to deal with this? The Chancellor highlighted the £22 billion black hole inheritance from the previous government. But if it's the case that this is going to be a recurring cost every year, that there's a £22 billion kind of deficit, I don't know what she's going to do next year. And this is why you don't say stupid stuff like we're not going to come back next year asking for more money. She boxed herself in with the VAT, income tax and national insurance stuff. She should have changed capital gains tax to match that of income tax, and she fumbled it. And this from Alex Wickham of Bloomberg, saying economists expect the OBR to say Rachel Reeves is breaking her own fiscal rules in the spring. That means the Chancellor faces having to fill a fiscal shortfall that would pose a potential threat to the bond market. I butchered this completely. that means the Chancellor having to fill shortfall that could pose a bond market test potentially tougher than the budget. And so this is I've lost the tweet completely, but this clearly is a huge problem for Rachel Reeves that she's going to have to deal with. And I know a lot of businesses are mad claiming that they've been betrayed or whatever, but
betrayed us. Have to trust someone to be betrayed. I never did.
And this is the case for a lot of the kind of Remainers and the pro-business people who thought somehow, despite all of what Starmer said, he would be different to to his rhetoric. That's the thing.
You ever betrayed us.
And the fact is, I never trusted Starmer, that's why I didn't vote for him.
Have to trust someone to be betrayed. I never did.
You have to trust someone to be betrayed, ain't that right? And we go back to this because a lot of those people who kept backing what's his face, who kept backing Starmer and Reeves, and who are mad that they got that they got pwned basically, because my man isn't as pro EU as you think he is, and he's not going to take us back into the single market, even though we can't even do that anyways. Is this your guy right here? Because I hope you remember this lesson.
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
You guys can't get fooled again, because you can't make the argument you thought Starmer would be different at the next election. You guys can't make the argument that you think Starmer's going to take us into the EU, because he's not going to do it. So whatever your reasons are for voting Labour at the next election, they fooled you once, you can't get fooled again. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.